Welcome on, bienvenue, welcome to the United Nations of Horror. We are hosts Mark and Jason. Hi, Jason.
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. I'm kind of psyched to talk about what we're covering tonight. Child's Play.
Everyone has a birthday they'll always remember.
Can we open my presents now, Mommy? A good guy! I knew it! I'm Chucky.
He's something, isn't he?
This is Andy's.
Time for bed, Andy. Good night, baby.
Good night, Aunt Maggie. Good night, Chucky.
Everyone knows most accidents happen at home.
How did that happen?
This is no accident.
Andy!
I'm Detective Mike Norris, homicide.
Andy!
Miss Peterson's dead, Miss Barkley. She fell from the kitchen window.
Someone's moved in with the Barkley family. And so has terror.
Mommy, I know who was on the counter.
Andy!
Who, Andy?
Chucky.
Nobody believes you about Chucky. He came alive in my hand.
Oh, for God's sake.
Why won't you believe me?
Because I'm sane, Mrs. Barkley. Sane and rational.
No one believes the truth. Or lives to tell it. There's nothing nice about murder. And there's nothing innocent about child's play.
But this is the start of something beautiful, I think. We're intending to go through all of the Child's Play movies. Not at a very fast pace, but, you know, through this year, maybe into next year, but we'll see. We'll probably get it all done this year, I should think. But there are 8 movies, which is what we are intending to cover. And we might possibly diverge. There's an entire TV series we might actually diverge into. But we'll see, right? We'll see how we go.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of it when it first came out, the first episode. So we'll have to see.
Yeah,
it didn't look bad, you know.
I mean, Chucky is an enduring franchise. There's been video games. There's a theme park attractions with Chucky, and I do remember him. I was really happy when he popped up in that Ready Player One movie, which was really funny because it was like a massive battle, and it was like unleash your deadliest warriors, and then you just see Chucky flying through the air with a knife in his hand, screaming into battle. That's
tremendous.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So
Child's Play it's up there with all the horror greats. I feel like, you know, you think of like Freddy Krueger and, you know, of course, Dracula and Frankenstein and all that, but as far as 80s horror icons, I mean, Chucky's definitely there.
Yeah, I mean, he's the leader of the pack when it comes to doll horror in the 80s, I'd say. He's excellent. I mean, there are a few rip-offs of this. I recently watched Ginger Dead Man, which is my second watch. I've watched that movie twice, and it's a goofy as hell movie. Obviously ripping off Chucky, right? But it's Gary Busey being a mad gingerbread man, and it's fun. But it's not scary at all. Child's Play has got its moments, hasn't it? So yeah, there is the two. Off the top of your head, is this like your favourite of the franchise, or have you seen
absolutely.
many?
Gosh, I've seen a lot of them over the years, but I feel like this is definitely probably the best one. But I like a lot of certain things in the other ones too. But yeah, as far as everything just coming together, I think this is my favorite one of the series. How about you, Mark?
I would have said another one, but on this rewatch, I've forgotten how good this film is, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Until I get to see it, I'm not sure. I'm a massive fan of Bride of Chucky. I think that's excellent.
A good one. Yeah.
It's excellent. But that is a much more fun one than a scary one.
Yeah.
But having said that, this is pretty fun. This is pretty fun. But until I watched them all, I can't be sure. I haven't seen the last few. I think I've seen Curse of Chucky. I think I've seen Seed of Chucky. I haven't seen Cult of Chucky or the reboot, Child's Play reboot from 2019. So
yeah,
who knows? Until we get through them, who knows?
Yeah, I also have not seen Seed of Chucky either. And I mean, that's kind of where I guess I got off kind of a Bride of Chucky, and I've been aware that there are other Chucky films, but I just have not taken that plunge. So I'm excited to do that as we go into this rewatch.
Yeah. What we talked about in terms of the rewatching, and this could change. This is no promises. What we have discussed though is maybe we wanted to do this one distinctly because it's the iconic one, right? And then we talked about maybe doing 2 and 3 together because they kind of occupy a similar space, I think. And then. Right. Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky, we definitely operate a similar space, right? Because they kind of almost lead on to each other. And then Curse and Cult, kind of, further steps along the road. And then probably finishing on its own again, the new reboot of Child's Play. But we also may throw in the TV series as well. And not promising watching a whole lot, but we might watch 1 or 2. We might watch it. We don't know. We're going to be doing other stuff. We're not doing just Child's Play this year. We're going to space it out and watch and do other stuff. There's plenty to talk about. I don't know why I've been on a vampire binge lately, so I've got plenty of like vampire movies that we could talk about at some point.
I've heard a thing or two about Captain Kronos remastered. So.
Yes. I rewatched Captain Kronos, which is one of my favourite Hammer films. But I got the 4K remaster and watched it last night, and it just gets better and better with each rewatch. It's one of those films you just like, oh, this is so good, and you just sit there and watch it. It's one of those films that you could drop in at any time as well, and you'll just watch it till the end. The sword fight, it looks spectacular, it has to be said. The sword fight, which was always good, but in the sharply rendered, in that, it's got really blue walls, and and there's a lot of shadow play. There's silhouettes of them fighting, which I feel like they kind of copied in Skyfall, in James Bond Skyfall. There's a really similar sort of in silhouette in blue of guys with fist fighting, not sword fighting, but it kind of always reminds me of this. And yesterday I also watched Vamp, the 80s sort of comedy horror, which is great. Have you ever seen it? You've seen it, right?
I have, yes.
That is a better film than is kind of people remember.
I agree. I think it's highly underrated, actually.
Grace Jones is really good. Really good as the lead vampiress. And it's kind of the same story. I feel like Dusk Till Dawn kind of ripped off the premise, right? Strip clubs full of vampires. Because guys go there and don't tell anyone they're going there. So, and it's all this kind of stuff. It's kind of fun. Anyway, let's get back to Child's Play. So, initial thoughts off the top of your head. What did you think of this rewatch?
Oh man, I as I've told you off air, I have seen this. It's been probably maybe 4 or 5 years, but I had forgotten a lot of it. And it's a very 80s horror movie, but in a wonderful kind of way. I feel like it's aged like fine wine, honestly. I really love every aspect of it. Even the special effects, I feel, are just so well done, and we'll get into that more as we talk about the plot, of course. But I mean, they really, really had a vision, and I mean, behind the scenes, I know things changed a lot, and we'll get into that too. But it's interesting how these people came together, and even though they obviously had some different ideas going around, they were able to come together and make something really, really solid. So initial thoughts are that it holds up really, really well. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, this film holds up. It is amazing how they've actually imbued this movie with a sense of dread and scares, right? Because it's a killer doll movie, right? If I hadn't seen this, I'd be thinking, you can't make a killer doll movie that lasts an hour and a half. It just doesn't. Right. You can have shorts, if you see the original trilogy of terror with that was it that scary doll? That totally works,
right.
but it's only 10, 15 minutes, right? This is a whole hour and a half, and the story doesn't lag. It's kind of interesting. It keeps developing, and the practical effects just keep it on the rails too, because they're really good. Obviously, they got a little person in a a suit in some shots, and then they're using animatronics in others, and it just all really goes well together. And there's some very earned jump scares too. That worked well for me. For some reason, I don't know why, I remembered the cop being Michael Norrie, the guy from The Hidden in this. So when I rewatched it, it's like, oh no, it's Chris Sarandon, and they kind of look similar, right? They kind of are similar.
They do have a similar look,
and I think Chris Sarandon's perfect in this because he's good at kind of being a straight drama, but he works in a kind of fun way, like he does in Princess Bride, say. He kind of works in other films, and he's not a stranger to horror. He's excellent in Fright Night, for example, as the vampire.
He's awesome in that. Which another one of my favorite '80s horror films. You mentioned Fright Night, but man, absolutely.
Yeah. So I really like the cast. I like the little kid. The little kid does great. I know he's not the best actor, but I think he works really well. He's very sweet, and it kind of
he's
works
so cute.
well. Yeah, he's the second cutest kid in horror after Gage in Pet Sematary, I'd say.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. You know what? I'd agree with that. I would 100% agree.
Yeah, this kid is kind of sweet. And it's kind of, Chucky says this, and it kind of, he's only, 6 or something, so,
Very
Catherine Hicks as his mum is very good too. I like. I can't remember seeing her much. I remember she was in Star Trek 4 as the whale scientist. She was quite good in that.
I was wondering where I'd seen her before.
Yeah, but she's been in other stuff. But it's only these Star Trek 4 and did I say Star Trek 6? Star Trek 4 I meant. And in this is really the ones I remember. And of course Brad Dourif is Chucky. Brad Dourif never does anything wrong, in my opinion. He's good in this. He's good in voice in this throughout the entire franchise. In fact, he's excellent in June. He's exceptionally good in one of the greatest of X-Files episodes called Beyond the Sea, where he plays a serial killer. He's really good in that. He's good in everything, right? His worm tongue, and so on. He's in June as Peter the Mentat, Peter DeVry. He's just really good. And in this, he delivers, right? This could have been a paycheck, but no, man. And apparently he didn't do the voicing for the puppet initially. They had someone else doing it, but they've realised it worked best when he was doing the voice. And I'm glad that they brought it back, because I think that really sells Chucky as well.
I do too. I read that when they initially screened it for test audiences, they used this different actor's voice, and apparently audiences just kind of found it like goofy, and they would laugh at Chucky at that point. But Brad Dourif, he definitely has that exact right delivery that makes you really it makes Chucky an evil, psychotic character.
Well, it binds it properly to the initial character we see, right?
Yes, exactly.
So it totally makes sense. There's some goofy stuff in this, like use of voodoo is kind of ridiculous, but it totally works and keeps you enjoy. It's a fun ride. This one, it's a fun ride without being really silly. It's still scary in places and stuff like that, right?
It is interesting that it ends up being voodoo, because when he was first doing the chant, I was thinking, okay, is he doing like some sort of a satanic Latin chant or something? And we find out later that it is voodoo. But it's interesting. I'd love to see a movie where they explore just more of that character before he becomes Chucky.
That's possibly in the TV show. We don't know, do we?
We don't know.
I definitely recognise some of the words in what he was chanting as voodoo words. I recognised them, so I kind of knew it was voodoo.
Nice.
And then it becomes much clearer in the script, doesn't it, that it's voodoo? It becomes entirely obvious.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be said, I believe Tom Holland, who directed this, also directed Fright Night.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Oh, such a great movie. I don't think we've covered that on UNH, but it's a high
should do
recommend.
that sometime, right? Tom Holland's made some good films. He made Fright Night. I thought he made some other stuff that I knew about, but I'm looking through it and I'm not seeing anything I recognise. So maybe I got it wrong. He directed the Stephen King adaptation of Thinner, which I quite like.
I like that one
of
too.
the lesser ones, but it's pretty good. But he
definitely these are the main two.
Yeah, I thought he would be on Monster Squad. I must be thinking of someone else. Okay. Yeah. So, should we go through... I mean, we don't have to go through it scene by scene exactly, but we could go through the general plot beats. Basically, Brad Dourif's this kind of mad killer guy called Charles Lee Ray. And it's in Chicago, and he's basically being chased by the cops. His partner, called Eddie, runs away, leaves him to it, and he gets shot by the cop, who's played by Chris Sarandon. And he basically is in a toy store, and he decides he's going to do a voodoo ritual over this doll. And he transfers his soul into a good guy talking doll, who's not called Chucky, right? They're just called good guy dolls. And you said this is
dolls,
this is set up previously by, you see the little kid seeing an ad for these dolls, and he really wants one. Is it I can't remember, is it his birthday or his Christmas? It's his birthday.
It's his birthday. I don't want to gloss over the opening scene too much though, because man, it is action packed, Mark.
Man,
cop shooting at him and his partner running out of him, all right, you're on your own, man. Peace out,
And he swears revenge on both his partner and the cop, doesn't he? That's quite important.
Yeah. Yep, he does.
He's super handy. And of course, Brad Dourif sells this sort of thing, no problem.
He knows he's dying because he's already been shot by the cop. And, it's very dramatic. You got the lightning that literally... crashes through the top of the store, and I mean, man, you would think this is like a straight up cop Chuck Norris action film from the 80s, It's really well done. I love this scene. There are a lot of great scenes. This might be my favorite out of the film.
Oh wow, you liked it, really? Yeah,
it really worked for me. And then the voodoo chant and everything. Like I said, the first time I saw this years ago, I would have been a kid. I wasn't sure if it was like a satanic chant or what. We know now it's like a voodoo. We find that out later in the movie, in fact. But I just thought it was really impactful. And the cop is just it's like, oh my God, what what in the world,
Yeah, it's kind of cool, and it's kind of interesting how they've taken this character, a doll, and in the most recent one, I believe it's a sort of AI, isn't it? They kind of modified.
I think so, yeah.
And of course, we covered Megan, didn't we? Not too long ago. And
it hasn't been too long, yeah.
And that's a kind of similar thing, a killer doll, basically. And then there's other ones coming out where it's a more adult, or there have been other ones where it's a more adult thing. But essentially, does this all come back to Chucky? There are other killer doll films before Chucky, right? Like Dolls, for example, and stuff like that. But Chucky's the standout one, is the one you think of, right, when you think about killer dolls.
Absolutely. That's the main one. I know there was a Twilight Zone episode as well that I've heard mentioned, and I saw it a long time ago, so I can't really say this is like Chucky or not, but I do remember that being like an influence on the film and the script.
Yeah, I'm just going to scroll down. I'm just having a look. I definitely saw a thing about influences on this film, and I'm just trying to find it now. I think Trilogy of Terror was an influence, for example. Right, what they said is, the Twilight Zone episode you mentioned is Living Doll. It's called Living
Doll. That's the one.
Yes.
Yep.
And there's also Dolls, which I already mentioned, and Trilogy of Terror, which I already mentioned.
Yes. Yeah, I know. He also mentioned Cabbage Patch Kids, which, as a kid, I had one of these Cabbage Patch Kids, and and you know, I didn't know anything about Chucky back then. Obviously, you know, my parents wouldn't have let me watch it as a kid.
Yeah.
But you know, when you go back and you think about it, you're like, yeah, you know what, that doll was kind of creepy.
Yeah.
But so many people in the '80s, so many kids from the '80s had one. You know, and as kids, it was just a normal thing. And you know, I remember I would take that thing to bed at night, and when you're a kid, that's just the sort of thing you do, just like the young kid in this.
He said another thing that influenced him was Magic. You know, the film Magic with Anthony Hopkins and the ventriloquist dummy. Which is quite an effective horror thriller film. And he also mentions Poltergeist, which, you know, had that killer clown doll. So that kind of makes sense. Yes, I can see it. And apparently this was originally called Buddy, but there is a Buddy doll, and they didn't want to get into a lawsuit, so they just come up with Chucky. Kind of made sense. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, especially with the name of the killer, you know.
Yeah.
Which I think I read it's based on 3 separate killers, if I'm not mistaken. I know Charles Manson is one. And then I cannot remember the other 2. I'm totally blanking, but
it's probably one of those guys with 3 names, I'm going to guess. Given he's called Charles Lee Ray in this.
But it's you know, a lot of good influences here on the initial character.
Yeah. So we see that his mum, who's called Karen, she's a widow. She's you know, not got that much money, and he wants this doll, and she's getting him clothes to look, you know, because that's all she can afford, and he's kind of disappointed. Her friend Maggie, who is quite good. Maggie turns up. Now I recognise this actress, and it took me a while to figure it out. In fact, I think I just knew her from somewhere, so I figured it was some American TV show like Taxi or something. But when I looked up, it's like, oh yeah, she was in the film Grease. She played one of the pink ladies called Marty. And I recognise her from that. So that's Maggie. She doesn't look that much different in this. Funny, she different
really
hair and everything,
actually.
But facially she looks same age almost. It's kind of slightly, because this was made 10 years later, right?
That's wild to think about, but yeah, you know, I've actually seen Grease, and I agree. She really does look almost exactly the same. I didn't pick up on that through my first watch, so that's a good catch there, Mark.
Yeah, and Maggie says, well, there's a homeless guy selling a good guy doll outside. They go out there, and he wants $50, and she's only got 30. But anyway, he sells it to her, and so he takes home the doll. She takes home the doll, and Andy loves the doll. You know, goes to bed with it and sits and watches TV with it. Immediately calls it Chucky and says, yeah, that's his name. Which is also the sort of nickname of Brad Dourif's character, Charles Lee Ray.
Indeed.
So that makes sense. Now, their boss basically have to go get the doll. Is like saying, "Oh yeah, do you like your job here?" And she's like, "Yes." And Maggie's like, "Calm down, Norris," or whatever his name is. You know? And he says, "You got to work tonight." He goes, "But it's my son's birthday." He goes, "Do you want to go to the birthday, or do you want your job?" It's one of those guys, right?
Yeah.
And Maggie says, "It's okay, I'll babysit." And she goes, and Karen's like, I can't ask you to keep babysitting. She goes, "Come on, it's the hottest day I've had in a month." You know, things like that. So she's happy to babysit Andy, but he starts doing things which seems like he's playing up, but he's just doing what Chucky's asking him to do, like put the news on, you know, and things like that.
Right.
And at one point, she makes Andy go to bed. She says, "But Chucky wants to watch the news," because there's reports about this serial, you know, him as a killer. She puts them to bed, and then as soon as she knows it, the TV screens come on, and Chucky's sitting there watching the news. So she's like, blames Andy, of course, right?
You would just think it's a prank.
But then Chucky. Now, apparently, the original cut of this film was like 2 hours, and there's a lot more Chucky. But one of the creators involved saying, "Look, you've got to cut out all the Chucky. It's got to be much more mysterious, a bit like Jaws." And I think that was a good decision. I think the film plays really well the way it's constructed, because we don't actually see Chucky moving much do we, until the final act, or halfway through the film at least.
I think that's one of the things that certainly makes it work. I think with this kind of film, much like Jaws, as you said, thinner is better. Trim it down. I think if we had watched, I would be interested to see the 2-hour cut. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if some of the effects would also, because all the effects we see in this film are pretty good. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if some of the stuff they trimmed, they're not as good, which again would kind of take you out of the film, wouldn't it?
It would.
If that was the case. But we don't know. So, could be.
Yeah, we have no clue. But I wonder if that is available somewhere, or maybe even on the Blu-ray itself. I'd like to try to track that down.
I've got the DVD. I'll have a look on the thing and find it out. But yeah. So Chucky does sort of go nuts, and essentially he hits her and she falls backwards through the window and smashes into a car below, which again looked like someone really did fall into a car then. It's quite effective. Quite an effective fall and quite an effective hit of the car.
The leading up to it, the tension built up is really good too. That's something this film is really good at, building up those kind of scares. I don't want to really call them jump scares, because I feel like that's doing them a disservice, but they you want to build up that fear level until the absolute end, and this film really manages to do that just right.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Chucky's going to do something, so you're watching it, and also I think the jump scares are valid there because of the structure. They're not just out of nowhere, and I know. Yeah, there's a reason it's kind of done that way. And it just happened, right? So she falls out the window, dies, and when Karen gets home, there's police, and they explain. And Norris, the detective who shot Charles Lee Ray, played by Chris Sarandon, Norris is actually the lead detective on that. And he's also a little concerned. There's footprints in flour on a tabletop. And he sort of says, well, "What do you say?" to Karen? "What do you think those are?" She goes, "Well, it can't be handy." He goes, "No, I checked all the shoes. None of them are that small." Because you've checked the shoes. She's getting peeved about this. But there's some suspicions that Andy might be somehow involved in it, i.e. a troubled child, right?
Right. Yeah.
So things are kind of going that way. Andy kind of does mention afterwards that Chucky might be involved, and he even says to his mum, Chucky told him his real name was Charles Lee Ray, but unfortunately there's no reason for her to. But if she could have told the detective that would have rung alarm bells, wouldn't it? But
big time.
That way.
Andy even looks at his shoes and he realizes, oh, Chucky is the one that did this.
Yeah.
But I don't think he, being a young kid, he doesn't totally comprehend the weight of it. Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, indeed. Now, the next day, Chucky talks the little kid to go into the worst part of town you can imagine. This was quite tense. I do not like to see little unattended children in such horrible neighbourhoods, right?
I know. God.
Basically, he's after his ex-partner Eddie Caputo, right? And then we get a scene of him kind of terrorising, by careful editing. We don't see much of Chucky. We see him scurrying and basically, an outline of him disappearing around a corner, things like that, while he's terrorising Caputo. But what happens is that he turns the gas on, right? And instigates a sort of explosion to kill Caputo, which again could look like an accident, right? But they again find Andy nearby, and they think there's something weird going on, and they want to take him in for observation to a psychiatric institution. Obviously, his mum is beside herself and cannot believe it, but she can't really do much about it, so she takes Chucky home. This bit I really like. This is a really good jump scare where she says something to Chucky, angrily, and it just says, "Hi, I'm Chucky." And she's like, and then she's really annoyed walking around the apartment, and she picks up the Chucky doll box, which is massive, and starts walking around talking, and then something falls out, and she notices it's a pair of batteries. And it's like, and the dolls just talk to her. So she's like, So she goes and looks, picks up the doll, looks in his bag, opens the compartment in a, tense way, and there's no batteries. And just as she finds there's no batteries, its head swivels around and says, "Hi, I'm Chucky," which scares the hell out of her. And I like this
Such
bit. She kind of dropped the doll, and the doll immediately kind of bounces under a sofa. Right, very well done.
I like that too.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Yeah. I did notice one actor I also recognised, the elderly sort of psychiatrist looking after Chucky. Recognised him. He's Mr. McGee, reporter McGee in the Incredible Hulk series, the one who was chasing David Banner in that series.
Oh yeah,
that's him.
Yeah, wow.
I recognise him from that. Yeah.
I would have.
Well, I just recognised him. It's like, oh man, that's Mr. McGee. He wouldn't like me when I'm angry. That guy. Yeah. So
I love that old show. That's a classic, man. Just one of the best.
Yeah. So she kind of doesn't. Well, basically, Chucky starts to attack her, but she gets away. Well, he leaves, doesn't he? He leaves the apartment.
Because I know at one point she's like threatening to like throw him in the fire, and I think that may be when we get or is that later? I may be
No, I think she threatens to throw him in the fire, and that's when he kind of.
That's when he comes to life.
Right.
Yeah. He calls her like a couple of really derogatory names, and I was like,
she uses the B word. He uses the B word, things like that. Anyway,
he fights her.
Yeah, and she goes to Norris and sort of says, "Look, the doll's come to life." He's going, "Come on, you've had a hard night. Go home." And he notices there's a mark on it. He goes, "Where'd you get that mark?" And it's like a bite mark that's Chucky size, right? She goes, "Chucky bit me," and he's like, "Huh?" And he goes, "I've got to go find the guy that sort of sold him to me and find out where he got him." And the detective knows which bit of town, and he's going, "That's a really bad part of town. Don't go there tonight. It's really bad news." And she goes off, but he's a good guy. He's about to finish work and he's exhausted, but he's a good guy, so he goes, "Ugh." And he goes up, looking for it as well. She does find the guy that sold it to him and asks him for more info, and he goes, "What's it worth?" But then he starts getting proper rapey. This down and out. She's going through all these down and outs, asking for it. Have you seen this guy? And they're all like, and she does find him, and he gets rapey. But then Norris turns up and punches him out, and
that was
forces him to tell. And he basically says he got it from the store that was destroyed, the store where Norris shot Charles Lee Ray. So Norris is like, he still doesn't believe it, does he?
No, he's very skeptical, and I can't blame him for being skeptical of everything.
Basically, it's silly. But
I would think someone saying that was in need of mental help as well.
But as he's driving away, Chucky basically gets a loop of, I don't know, is it cord or something around his neck while he's driving, and starts to strangle him. And this bit went on a bit. I was like, for goodness sake, because if I was that guy, I would have immediately stopped the car. I wouldn't be like slamming on the accelerator while I'm being choked. I know it's very difficult being choked, to sort of work out things. But man, that car was careening all over the road, smashing into other cars. It was like,
I was wondering, did Chucky cut the brakes maybe? Because I know he tried to hit the brakes at one point, or at least it looked like it.
Oh, I thought his foot was just slipping. But yes, that could have been. But essentially, it turns over the car, right? It gets...
it's crazy.
It takes a crash, and the car's turned over. So he's lying upside down in the car, and Chucky's still wandering around. And he's got a big knife. Oh, yeah, I should have mentioned, while he's driving, the knife is coming through the chair, and he's trying to... and the bottom of the chair, and he's trying to avoid this being stabbed, and that was almost play for laughs. In fact, it kind of was play for laughs, but it was kind of tense as well, right?
It was. I like how he kind of puts his feet up almost like on the dash at one point, and almost stands not stands, but lifts himself up, and it goes like right through where he would normally be sitting. I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
Like you say, it's tense, but it's kind of like funny at the same time.
So-
it's very over the top.
Yeah, but he does have a gun. He keeps missing Chucky because A is so small and B is so fast. We see one very tense scene where he's in the car and we see Chucky's hand reaching behind him just to grab this big carving knife. There's quite a good bit of tension here. I quite enjoyed it. But essentially, he manages to shoot Chucky, who feels it, and he doesn't understand why. So Chucky then goes and sees, I don't know, another voodoo guy, right?
The original guy he learned from, actually, because while this is going on, Karen goes to the apartment of Chucky, and she sees all these mural paintings, and I believe that's when the cop shows up there, and they decide they're going to go together to meet the voodoo guy. But meanwhile, Chucky's already been there.
Yeah, again, a nice bit of artwork in this part, wasn't it? I mean, there's some effort made in this film. It's not a throwaway film. They're putting in the time and the effort to give it a reality. Given how ridiculous it is, they are putting in a lot of effort to sort of convey a sort of a detail and richness to what's going on. I quite like it.
I do too. You certainly would buy into the fact that, okay, Charles Lee Ray is into this weird religion based on these paintings. We know more about voodoo today, but in the 80s, voodoo was a very kind of uncommon thing. And I mean, that's why we have so many movies in the 70s and 80s having to do with voodoo, because really we didn't understand it much,
I have to say, the vibe of this piece of the film, where she was like going through fairly desolate places looking for stuff, it reminded me of a later film, which was Candyman. In that film, Virginia Madsen's kind of going to pretty rough part of Chicago, against Chicago, trying to find answers, and the Candyman's I felt there was a similar vibe. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I do too. Although I think Candyman was in Detroit, wasn't it? I might be wrong about that.
Oh, it was Chicago. It was something green, wasn't it? Something green.
Yeah.
Chicago.
You
could be right. You could be right. I might be mixing.
I mean, I know both cities have had a bad reputation at times, so it could really be either one. It was.
No, it's Cabrini Green in Chicago. Yeah, Cabrini Green.
Ah, okay, man,
yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm probably thinking Detroit because RoboCop and a lot of the kind of messed up areas in this film reminded me of some of the really rough parts of Detroit that RoboCop is in the 1980s film.
Fair enough. But that's probably why it reminds me of it, because they're both Chicago, maybe.
Actually, the exteriors were shot in Chicago as well, so it really is authentic. Yeah, Chicago has a cool look to it with all its Gothic buildings. There's a lot of kind of Gothic architecture in Chicago, which I think is really cool. A lot of people.
There's been some great films based in Chicago, haven't there? Trading Places, things like that, right?
The Batman films.
It's a very Chicago looking. It's very Chicago.
Yeah.
But bits of Batman. One of the Batmans was shot in Croydon, in just outside London, which is a fairly rough place there. But it used to be quite an up-and-coming place, but now it's kind of just grim and cityscape kind of thing. Anyway, so he basically, Chucky goes to see this guy that taught him voodoo, and basically starts torturing him with the use of a voodoo doll, and it's kind of almost comic that he breaks the leg of the voodoo doll and the leg of the man breaks, things like that.
But it's pretty effective. It looks pretty brutal.
Basically, he wants to come out of the body, and the man says it can't happen. And he says the longer you're in the doll, the more it will become human, which is why he's getting injured now. And he says the only way you can escape is you've got to transfer your soul to the first human that you revealed your true identity to, which, of course, is little Andy. Chucky's really happy about this because he, as if he's a 6-year-old, he's got his whole life ahead of him. if you could.
Exactly. Yeah. Start all over again, pretty much. You know.
So, so that means Chucky's going for Andy. Karen and Norris turn up and find John bleeding to death, and John kind of expels them, tells them what's happening, and to kill Chucky, they will have to destroy his heart, is what he says. Meanwhile, Andy kind of knows Chucky's coming. He's in the hospital and he's terrified, but he manages to... Chucky comes in and inadvertently... Andy tricks him, right? He does the old sleeping under the... lump under the sheets thing. So, and Andy... and Chucky stabs it, but it's not Andy, and he manages to get out of the room that Chucky came in through. Meanwhile, Chucky just goes out through the window because he's small enough, right? Through bars through a window. And the doctor looking after Andy catches him in the corridor and sort of says, no, and he tries to give an injection and he goes, no, he'll kill us, he'll kill you and everything. And yeah, sure enough, Chucky kills him, right? First he slashes the back of his leg, which is a bit reminiscent of Pet Sematary, isn't it? Gage in Pet Sematary.
It is, yeah.
I guess it's a standard play for someone little like a child to attack an adult, right? That's sort of makes sense. And then he puts the electroshock thing on the doctor's head and turns it up full. And basically the doctor starts cooking, right?
Big time.
Yeah. But Andy...
pretty brutal
again,
stuff.
Yeah, Andy runs home and Chucky catches up with him and knocks him out with a little baseball bat, right? And then he starts a ritual. He starts a ritual, doesn't he, to possess Andy, I guess. And they get in. And then there's a big old fight, which is, we get a lot of Chucky in this bit. Loads.
We do,
Chucky.
yeah.
And it totally works. It totally works. Whoever they got in the Chucky outfit, running around for real, they got the size really well. It looks pretty perfect to me. I mean, the movement's
to me
quite different from when it's not a person, obviously, but even so, I thought that again was quite good.
It's rather amazing to me how it all kind of comes together. And even because, like you say, in these last scenes, we see a lot of Chucky, unlike the rest of the movie, which is very quick shots, but here they're like, nope, it's all out,
Yeah, and basically Chucky's on the attack, but they're constantly sort of beating him back and basically lopping bits off of him, like shooting off an arm or a part of a leg. He's all burnt up at one point, isn't he? He's all burnt.
Oh, big.
And essentially his head comes off as well. So there's this burnt head. And then Norris's partner arrives, who isn't well cast, I have to say. Or they just don't give him enough screen time to have any kind of presence in the movie. So he feels at this point to be a bit of a just parachuted in. He needed to be in it more, or they needed a more charismatic actor or something. I don't really know.
He's kind of just there.
Now Norris says to him, "Don't touch it," and he thinks they're just being stupid. He goes and finds the head, and he props up on the telly. And then while he's laughing about it, he's leaning on the head on the telly. Chucky's body bursts through an air vent and starts strangling him.
This part made me laugh. When he burst through the air vent, I was like, "Oh, come on, guys!"
Yeah. But then Norris basically he's on the attack again as he's running towards him. Norris finally shoots him through the heart, killing him. And then, but then as they leave, you see Andy kind of looking really worried for a crack in the door at Chucky's remains, and we get a freeze frame, one of the classic horror freeze frame, right?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I love doing that.
What a film! What a film!
What a film, man.
Yeah, but we all know
classic.
you can't keep a good Chucky down, so we'll be back in 2 and 3 and 4, etc. I cannot remember the premise for bringing him back in 2, so I'm kind of keen. Looking forward to watching that when we get to it,
yeah. I was like, man, I really don't remember the second one well.
No.
But it's been so long since I've seen it. I mean, longer than this one, but it's probably been like over 10 years since I've seen the second. Really, most of the other ones.
Yeah, I think if I remember rightly, and I could be wrong, 2 and 3 are a little more slower. You know, they're not quite as much fun, but we'll see. I could be misremembering.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a good chat that we do 2 together next time.
I think so as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, I thought it was solid. It wasn't entirely trouble-free production. There was discussions of how much Chucky and how much shouldn't have Chucky and all this sort of stuff. But whatever, the end product is really stands up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think despite the fact, like, I think everyone on set had varying ideas, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because you got a lot of creative people working together that, you know, perhaps want their way. And at the end of the day, those people, even though they maybe didn't get along, like I say, they came together and they made something really, really good. I know at one point, one of the, I think it's like the producers weren't speaking to each other or something, but
that's a shame.
You know,
it worked
but
out.
I'm glad it got made. It did. In the
what
end,
made
really
me laugh is I was looking at what some of the directors they want the studio were petitioning to make this film before they got to Tom Holland. It did make me laugh. William Friedkin. They approached William, you know, the guy that made The Exorcist. The French
that would have been
and funny enough, the car bit, you know, the bit where he's rushing around in the car's going while he's being attacked by Chucky, that kind of reminded me a bit of the French Connection. There's a car chase scene in that made me. Irving Kershner, the guy that made The Empire Strikes Back, amazing. Robert Wise, who has made many, many brilliant films of all sorts of. I mean, I think he directed West Side Story and Star Trek The Motion Picture and The Day the Earth Stood Still, for example.
Wow.
It's like, why would they approach directors like this for this movie? It just seems weird, right? They're clearly not going to take it on. But yeah.
I know there were a lot of changes too, Mark, in the initial script. I don't know if you want to touch on that or not, but from what I understand, you know, they thought like the mother and the son in the original script were kind of unsympathetic is the main thing I remember reading about in this.
Really?
Yeah,
it doesn't come through in this script, does it? In what we get, that is not true.
Yeah,
but maybe it needed some polishes then, right?
And then, like apparently in the original script, the doll was like somehow filled with living blood, and the Andy like gives him some of his blood, so they're bonded, and like it sounded like it was kind of a little nuts.
Yeah, that would. You'd have to do it with a lot more like a 10-year-old than a 6-year-old wouldn't be doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
10-year-old might, you know, Blood Brothers and all that sort of stuff. I can see,
right.
But yeah, I think the 6-year-old thing would just not work. And we talked about there was a 2-hour cut. That got a lot of negative reviews from the screening audience, and they couldn't figure out what to do. And basically, the suggestion was apparently Is this Irving Kershner? Someone called Kershner.
Yeah, he was one of the producers, wasn't he?
He was always an advocate of having less Chucky. He said it's got to be more like Alien or Jaws, right? You don't see as much. And he's dead right. Holland was
right
not online with him and thought it was a bad idea, but he went and finally did it, and it kind of worked out. And the voice, apparently, they had a different voice. They had the voice was too goofy, the male voice. Then they got a woman because they were thinking along the lines of The Exorcist. They got an older actress to do the lines, and again, didn't quite work. And basically, Brad Dourif wasn't available, and then he became available, so that they tried that, and it worked. It's amazing that all these problems worked out as well as they did, to be honest.
I agree, because it does sound like it was a very troubled production, ironically. But man, you know, sometimes it just all comes together. And in this case, it did. Usually, you know, whether it's a film or video games, I tend to think when I start reading of things like this, like troubled productions, you know, I think, oh man, this is not a good sign. This is probably not going to turn out well. And 9 times out of 10, it really doesn't usually turn out well. But here's the exception, Chucky, you know, and it shows that sometimes even when you have all this crazy stuff going on, something great can come from it.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't think the critics at the time were that big on it. I mean, some of them liked it, but I think once it got to home video, Chucky's, it's a bit like Freddy or Jason, right? It got to that kind of thing. That Chucky is an IP now, was for a long time. Pretty much early 90s onwards, everyone knew Chucky was,
Oh, so, even in the 80s, I knew about Child's Play. I wasn't allowed to see it. And I don't think I saw it probably until the, probably late 90s would have been for me when I finally got to check these out, like 1999 or something. But, I think everyone, much like Freddy, because Freddy was huge in the 80s as well. You had the Freddy Krueger hotline and stuff, and Chucky was right up there with him, man. So
I mean, Child's Play as a franchise also created quite a bit of controversy later on in the later entries, in the UK specifically. We'll talk about those when we cover those films, I think. But Child's Play was kind of pretty much one of those ones the audience embraced and the critics not so much. It felt like it was one of those. So we both enjoyed this film greatly, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think I'm just looking over some of the critics' reactions, and I'm like, yeah, boy, I felt very differently than they did. So and I know you did as well.
Yeah, definitely. I've always liked this film, but I don't rewatch it very often, and it was a real pleasure to rewatch it this time because it was just way better than I remembered it, and I remembered it quite fondly, And I actually checked my review, and when I looked on my Letterboxd review, I thought it was really good last time I watched it, but it's been a number of years since I watched it. You see, you just forget sometimes, right? You just forget sometimes.
Yeah.
I think with sequels as well, it can like play tricks on you of what you thought of a film as well.
Right.
One of the pleasures of something like Letterboxd is to actually, that's what I thought.
It's nice to be able to go back for sure, and I need to do a better job of updating mine because I had one originally and then I lost the password for it, and but it's great when you can go back. Yeah.
But I was quite pleased to see what I felt was a good score for this one was the same score I gave it last time. And in fact, I say that I haven't watched it in quite a while. It was 2021, so it was only 4 years. It wasn't that long ago. But I have watched it. I think this is probably my 5th, possibly 6th watch of this film overall. Letterboxd hasn't been around forever, so I haven't got all of those. But I think I probably hadn't watched it for quite some time before the 2021 watch. I think it was probably a decade or 15 years or so, so it was quite a while. But I do remember watching it a few times when I first encountered it, and then watching it again whenever it was on telly, kind of thing. So
I think that may be where I first saw it, is on the telly, as you say. Because it seems like I saw it like way earlier at one point, and then I know when I saw the uncut version later on, I was like, "Oh, this is a pretty mean film, actually." Pretty brutal, I should say, at points.
Yeah. So. Okay, let's. We have got some feedback. Shall we rate it and then get into the feedback? What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
What would you score this film, say, out of 5?
Oh, out of 5, man, Mark, I like this one a lot. I think it really just hits all the right notes for me. I'm actually, I think also, let me mention the soundtrack. It's really good too. It's not like overly dark.
The music is very good. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that.
It kind of has that almost fantasy, like childlike wonderment about it at points, but it also gets very dark when it needs to. So really good score. We've talked about the animatronics and everything, and that was all pretty revolutionary for the time, and I think it all works the way it was cut. So I'm going to give it a perfect score of 5 out of 5.
Ah, wow! No objections to that. I would totally understand that. I won't score it that highly. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. But I will say it's amazing how well this film works, given the really goofy premise that underlies it, right? I think later films, like Megan, could get away with more because it's a killer robot, which feels more likely to happen than a voodoo-possessed kid's doll, right?
Exactly.
So that it has less to overcome. Child's Play has to overcome that initial silly premise. And actually, to function as a horror film in the way it does, is quite impressive. This is an impressive film. Given its troubled production and its rough cut being not great, I'm amazed how good it is. But it totally works for me. And like you say, the music works. And also the fact Brad Dourif did the voiceover really works. The kid's very sweet. I think the actor, apart from Chris Sarandon's partner Jack, who is quite weak, and also the Vagrant guy is quite weak. I think the cast is very, very strong, very strong. Even to the little kid, I thought he was good. I think this is a solid horror film, and I'd give it 4 out of 5.
Very cool.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't know about the trouble production at all until I started researching for this episode, Mark. Were you aware of that? I'm just curious.
No, only for this episode. I was quite surprised. I've got the entire box set on DVD, and in fact, it's still sealed because it was weird. I remember buying the box set, and when it came, it was like from Child's Play 2 onwards. It was like, well, where's 1? So I had to buy one separately because they didn't tell you that, or it wasn't that obvious from the packaging that it only it didn't include what. So I presume the rights were owned by someone else, or I don't know.
Yeah,
I hadn't read anywhere, but it was weird that a box set wouldn't come with the very first film. But sometimes that happens. Strange. Like Twin Peaks, 4 years. Twin Peaks. When you bought the series, it didn't come with the pilot episode. You had to buy that separately because it was owned by someone else. But,
how odd!
Yeah, it's it's a common thing. I think, for example, Babylon 5, right? That set doesn't come with the original pilot because it's owned by someone else. And what's even worse is that someone else hasn't released a version of it. So it's like,
that is the worst.
What? Anyway, yeah. Let's get on to our feedback. We've got one piece of feedback from Kevin Matthews. Hi, Kevin, friend of the show.
Indeed. Thank you for writing in.
He's got a fair bit to say, and it's kind of interesting. Let's have I'll read through it now. Remember when your parents could send you along to the video store with their membership card, and then if they knew you well enough or just didn't care, you could rent pretty much whatever you wanted within reason? I do. Kevin, I do too. I did it all the time. And what's worth, I was a little pirate because I managed to get a cheap video player to hook up to my proper video player, which meant I could copy films as I rented them too.
The same thing.
And they were never great. They didn't look very good when you did it, but it didn't matter because they were part of your collection.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
But I used to rent all sorts. And I also remember in the video shop in Britain, the very, very striking covers. I mean, the covers were unbelievable. And they like, oh man, that film looks awesome, and it'd be the cover to, Freddy. It'd be Freddy or something adjacent. But it might be things like Nightmares of a Damaged Brain or Cannibal Holocaust or something like that. Anyway, one weekend myself and my bestie decided to rent Child's Play. We'd heard the praise, we'd seen some clips, but it was only a 15 and we were hardened, nearly 13-year-olds at that point. So how scary could a film about a killer doll be? And he answers that question by saying, it turns out very scary. We were properly freaked out, and the voodoo revenge killing made us wince more than expected. I love the whole series. I love the way the comedy has developed throughout, but I'd always loved that I was terrified by that first viewing, and of course then got to boast that I'd seen it the next Monday morning in the school playgrounds. Excellent.
Nice.
Sorry,
yes. Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. Man. That was always fun when you could go to the video store and get away with renting something, you weren't supposed to.
At the start of the 80s, when video was taken off, I was 15 already, so I didn't have that thrill of seeing things I really shouldn't have seen early. Having said that, I was fairly tall for my age, so I did used to go and see 15 movies at the movies when I was like 12 and 13. I could get away with it, just about. And also, X films or 18s when I was 15. So, that's I was that kind of age. So I missed out on watching videos you really shouldn't when you're too young. I missed out that whole thing because I wasn't too young. So I appreciate that one, Kevin. That's a really fun one. Have you got this? Do you remember the first time you saw this film? Because I can't really remember, to be honest.
I think I probably saw it on television.
Yeah. It was early 90s.
It was way later before I got to see it uncut on DVD. Probably would have been during the the Netflix era even. Well, you know what? It may have been a little bit before that. Probably 99 or 2000 for me to see the uncut version. And the uncut version was very different than the TV broadcast version.
Oh, we don't get that. We don't get that. We get it uncut in Britain. Yeah, there's a thing called a watershed, and so we don't really have cut films. They're on late, but we don't really have them. I'm just trying to see when it was first broadcast on British TV, but unfortunately there was a funny panel show called Child's Play around the same time, so I'm getting details about
oh, really?
That rather than when it was actually shown as a movie. I can't find anything. But okay. Well, we enjoyed this one, and next time we talk about Child's Play, I think we're probably going to cover 2 and 3 together, aren't we?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. There was a lot to kind of unpack with this one, so we just wanted to do it individually because I do feel like if you don't watch any of the other stuff in Child's Play, this one is really worth seeing. And I like elements of all the films, like I said at the beginning, but this one, man, it's special.
I'm really looking forward to watching Bride of Chucky again because I remember really being blown away how good that was, how funny and clever, and the addition of Jennifer Tilly. Was it Jennifer?
It was Jennifer Tilly.
Awesome addition.
I cannot forget.
And I saw a picture of her there. I don't know how real this is, but someone took a picture of her. She was travelling for an airport and she had a Tiffany doll with her.
Oh, that's great.
And it's like, oh my God, she's like a Nadja from What We Do in the Shadows, walking around with her own doll. It's a bit like that.
That's wild.
That's so awesome. Jennifer Tilly's awesome anyway. So yeah,
the crazy thing is, it seems like just yesterday I saw Bride of Chucky because I remember actually renting that DVD from the rental store. Like it was probably Blockbuster. We don't even have those anymore. But I feel like a lot of people today, I kind of feel bad because they don't get that sort of thrill of seeing the really cool covers, and just that sort of anticipation for the film. And, then they rent it, they get home, and, whether it's good or bad, you always remember like seeing that cover and picking that film out, which is a lot of fun unto itself. I wish video rental stores would somehow come back. I don't think it's going to happen, but I can wish,
Well, one of the things about Bride of Chucky is the director. I really like the work of the director, Ronnie Yu. He did Freddy vs. Jason, right?
That was him. Yeah, we both love that film.
I really like a British film we did called The 51st State, which is never much talked about, but I really like it. It's really fun with Samuel L. Jackson, a gangstering it up in the UK. It's really it's a fun British gangster. How we do funny British gangster films. But
you guys
stop. It's that kind of deal, right?
Nice.
So it's one of those. It's a really fun film as well. So I do like. I think he was almost directed Snakes on a Plane, but he didn't. Which is a shame.
That would have been
because
great.
That's him and Samuel L. Jackson again, right? So yeah,
exactly. Doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, he's got some really interesting stuff as Ronnie Yu. Before that, it was Chinese movies, Bride with the White Hair, things like that. Yeah,
which I love those too.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's probably time to take this home.
Indeed. So thanks everyone for listening, and Mark, thank you for coming on as always. We love doing this. We don't get paid to do this, guys. All we ask is if you have time, jump on our Facebook, give us a comment, or even on YouTube, give us a comment. Either one is great. Just look us up on Facebook or YouTube, United Nations of Horror, and we're going to be the first one that pops up. Of course, the audio version always drops first, so you can get us on Spotify or Amazon or wherever you listen to your podcast these days. We're going to be there. But so please, again, check us out. Come by and say hello. One of us, as we like to say.
One of us.
Yeah. So until next time, I've been Jason.
And I've been Mark.
And we'll see you next time right here on the United Nations of Horror. Almost got it that time.
That was clean enough. That's fine. You just
only stumbled around a little bit.
He said, "Hi there, ain't I lucky? Pleased to meet you. Call me Chucky. I'll always be your very bestest friend. You know, pals are hard to come by, but you'll find that I'm a good guy who'll stick with you until the very end." Then, much to my surprise, he rolled his head and he blinked his eyes. So I took him home to be my very own. And things were really going swell till my auntie slipped and fell. And Chucky laughed and said, "Now we're alone." C-H-U-C-K, why'd you come out and play? Listen up, fool, I'll tell you why. 'Cause Chucky's bad, that ain't no lie. Chucky, go away. You're too rough when you play. Over in the corner now, peekaboo. Hidey, hidey, ha, ha, I see you. Well, things started getting stranger, and the TV warned of danger. And Chucky said that he was really bugged, 'cause it isn't very funny being treated like a dummy. So I went and gave that little guy a hug. But he pushed me away and said, "I'm sick of this child's play. No more Mr. Good Guy from now on." Then I got really scared, 'cause he jumped straight up in the air and laughed and started cursing up a storm. C-H-U-C-K, why don't you come out and play? 3-5-5-4-4-4, my name's Chucky and here I come. Chucky, go away and don't come back another day. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, my name's Chucky and here I go. Boy, was it a mess. Chucky said he'd been possessed, but my mommy said that he was off his rocker.